You stand in Westminster, 1337. In this chamber, medieval queens are measured by dynastic heirs. Smoke from beeswax stings your throat. Stay with me. The bed is high and warm. Your midwife stands at your left. She knows this work. The royal physician sits at your right with his roll of instruments closed. Your confessor waits near the foot with a pyx and a small ewer of water. Your ladies hold the door. No man enters without their sign. Another pain builds. You grip the bedpost. The midwife rubs warm oil into her palms. She tells you when to breathe and when to hold. The physician watches for swelling. The confessor checks the ewer. He plans for emergency baptism if needed. Pastoral manuals in your realm allow it when death is near. Thomas of Chabham wrote this plainly, and Gratian's collection sits behind him. One thing inside the chest is not for a living child. Since yesterday, the shutters have stayed shut. The bed is hung with dark cloth. You will not leave until the bleeding ends. Then comes churching at the chapel door. The Manuel Sarum gives the form. A veil, a blessing, a return to public rooms if your strength allows. Your midwife names the risks in simple words. Fever after delivery, bleeding that does not stop, shoulders that lodge. The Trotula of Salerno gives oils and cautions for stalled labor and tearing. Guide to Chauliac's Great Surgery, finished 1363, teaches turning a child if the position blocks the way. These are not tales. These are tools. Choose who commands your body in this hour. Exactly a year earlier, your child slid out still. Your women washed the body and carried it to the chapel before dawn. You lay in a dark room and learned to count days by pain. 3 months later, you held court again and smiled for the hall. Back to Westminster. The physician quotes authorities. He prefers order and timing. The midwife prefers your breathing and the feel of your bones. Today they agree on one point, no hellebore. You nod. You need their accord. You look at the ewer by the confessor's foot. If a newborn fails to breathe, any Christian may baptize. If you die undelivered, clerical teaching in Europe orders the womb opened to try to save the child for baptism. The Saxon Spiegel sets this in the early 13th century. Scholars like Catherine Park have traced the rule in pastoral teaching. You know this. You keep your eyes on the water anyway. The chamber carries faith and a knife, side by side. The steward waits outside with 2 letters already written. One for a son, one for a daughter. He will send one at the first news. If there is no cry, he will draft a 3rd line by himself. Your body decides which hand he uses. Your pains move into your back and hips. The midwife readies a stool with an open seat. She says you may change if needed. Queens often deliver in bed. The stool stands ready for speed. You agree to try when she tells you. 3 months earlier, you walked the long gallery and felt the child turn. The midwife smiled. Head down now. She told you to keep moving. She warned you to send for her at the first sign of blood. Back to Westminster. You study the chest again. Swaddling lies on top. Beneath it, a burial garment waits for use you refuse to name. Your chief lady closes the lid. She does not meet your eye. No one speaks. Preparation looks harsh. It prevents panic. The midwife asks for warm wine. The physician brings the cup himself. He stills his hands on his knees. Your confessor goes over the short baptism formula once in his mind. He puts the ewer within reach. He glances at the door and then back to you. You breathe on the count. Another pain builds. The room holds to its order. Rope, oil, cloths, water, witnesses. The next sound will set the hall's mood. You pull on the knotted rope. The midwife counts your breath. The physician keeps his roll closed. Your confessor places the ewer where he can reach it in one step. Your ladies hold the door against any man without their sign. One decision cannot wait much longer. Women crowd the chamber by design. They witness the birth. They will swear the child came from your body. Household records often name these witnesses. Barbara Hannawalt showed how their oaths stopped disputes early. Your chief lady has wax and a stylus ready. Exactly a week earlier, you felt the child turn. The midwife marked it and taught you how to walk and sleep. She told you what to drink and what to refuse. She warned you to send for her at the first blood. Back to Westminster. Witnesses fix the truth before lawyers speak. The physician asks to examine. The midwife nods once. He checks gently. He names the trochlea for oils and fomentations. He quotes Guy de Chauliac on turning a malpositioned child and on patience. He recommends no hellebore. She agrees. You accept their accord. Agreement keeps hands from crossing each other. Your confessor tests the stopper on the ewer. He rehearses the short baptism line in his head. Pastoral manuals permit emergency baptism by any Christian when death is near. Thomas of Chabum says it plainly. The law stands near your bed without raising its voice. The midwife offers the stool. When I say, you nod. The pains settle low across your back. She oils her palms. She guards the perineum with a flat hand. She tells you when to push and when to pant. You obey. The physician watches for swelling and for the cord. Now your body sets the clock. At dawn the next day, your steward will ride with the letter. He waits outside with both versions sealed. Son or daughter, if there is no cry, he will write again by himself. He will count faces on the road. He will weigh smiles against claims. Back to Westminster. Your waters break with a clean warmth. The midwife checks the color. She calls a number to her assistant. She feels for the cord with her smallest finger. Loose, she says. The physician breathes out. He moves the roll farther from the bed. The confessor does not touch the ewer. One wrist eases. Others remain. You shift to the stool. Your ladies move like a drill. One steadies your shoulders. One braces your back with a cushion. The midwife takes your hands. She looks in your eyes. Now, she says. You bear down. She tells you to stop. She guards the skin. She tells you to pant. You do. Exactly a year earlier, a countess in a nearby palace died on the third day. The priest baptized what he could not save. The bell tolled before prime. The men rode home silent. Back to Westminster. The physician lifts a cup. Honeyed wine. You sip. The midwife asks for warm cloths. She orders the room quiet. She keeps the brazier steady. She sets your feet. She counts. Each command buys another chance. The head presses. The ring burns. She says, wait. You pant. She smooths the path. Now, she says. You push once, then twice. The shoulders turn under her hand. She nods. One more. The room holds its breath for a cry. Your steward's boots all shift outside the door. Your chief lady grips the wax tablet. Your confessor keeps a thumb on the ewer's lid. The physician leans forward but does not touch. You bear down on the count. The midwife works without hurry. She tells you to breathe. She says again. You answer with your whole body. The next sound will change the realm. You push on the count. The midwife supports the opening with her palm. She tells you to pant. The physician watches without touching. Your confessor keeps a thumb on the ewer's lid. The chamber waits for one sound. Hold steady for this turn. Exactly 3 months earlier, the council clerk read a short clause. If a mother dies undelivered, the womb must be opened to try to save the child for baptism. He called it custom. He said priests could order it. He did not look up from the page. Back to Westminster. This is the law that lives in your room. The midwife checks for the cord with her smallest finger. Clear, she says. She tells you to push. You bear down. She says stop. You pant on her count. The physician moves the roll farther away. He keeps his hands empty. You know the sources behind that clause. Gratian's teaching anchors baptism as urgent. Thomas of Chabum allows lay baptism in danger. The Saxon Spiegel writes plainly in the early 13th century about opening the womb after the mother's death. Historian Catherine Park traced how this rule spread in clerical training. The words reached your clerk. They reached this bed. The secret is policy, not rumor. You feel burning at the opening. The midwife says wait. You hold. Now, she says. One push, then another. The head slides. A turn under her hand. Once more. You push. Shoulders pass. A thin cry breaks. It strengthens. Your ladies murmur things at once. The confessor lowers the ewer and exhales. The physician closes his eyes and opens them clear. The midwife lifts the child so you can see. A girl. She rubs the back with a firm cloth. The cry holds. She ties and cuts the cord with practiced hands. Your chief lady notes the hour and the witnesses. She writes daughter. She leaves space for the name. The steward outside will carry the second letter at dawn. It will bring gifts and smiles. It will not silence cousins with claims. You know that. You keep breathing anyway. The midwife waits for the placenta. She will not pull. She strokes your belly in circles. She asks for warm wine. You drink. The weight slides free. She checks it whole. She examines the bed with care. Retained pieces mean bleeding. Bleeding means danger. She nods only when she is certain. The physician nods with her. Now the unseen risks begin. Exactly a year earlier, a countess nearby died on the third day. The coroner wrote fever after birth. The parish women remembered the smell before the chills. The record used one word. The women used many. Back to Westminster. Your confessor prepares for the public baptism in the chapel. Emergency rites are no longer needed. He confirms godparents. 2 names will bind 2 houses. You had chosen them for balance. He approves. The wet nurse waits in the passage. The midwife lays your daughter at your breast first. The mouth finds and latches. You watch the face. After the first suckle, the nurse will take her. Household roles in noble houses pay nurses and rockers clearly. Barbara Hannawalt documented these lines. You have seen them signed. You drink watered wine. The physician advises rest and warmth, not strong purges. John of Gadsden's Rosa Anglica says the same, moderate heat, simple drink. He keeps his instruments closed. He earned your thanks today. You give it. Relief is not release from danger. The midwife measures the cloths. She tells your ladies what smell to fear. She orders clean hands, steady heat, and quiet. She sets the ewer aside. She keeps the chamber's rule. At Vespers, the king will come. He will touch your hair and the child's brow. He will praise God and the midwife. He will speak of roads and borders. He will not mention the clause. He trusts the quiet law that did not fall today. The next trial waits on the third day. The chamber settles. Your daughter sleeps. Your body rests under watch. The midwife keeps the cloths and the clock. The physician notes your pulse at each visit. The confessor sets the prayers for baptism. One danger past. One more may arrive unseen. The wet nurse enters when the midwife allows it. Your chief lady reads her terms from the roll: gown, shoes, chamber, stipend. She will live near. This lets you see the child daily. Household accounts from noble houses list such wages clearly. Barbara Hannawalt studied many of them. You approve the terms with a nod. Milk and loyalty travel together. At prime the next day, the baptism takes place in the chapel. Damp stone. Beeswax. The child cries once and settles. Your confessor pours water from a small shell and speaks the rite. The godparents answer as agreed. Names bind houses. The clerk records name, date, and hour. Back to Westminster. You do not walk into the chapel yet. Your lying in continues. The blessing for your return will come near 40 days, if strength holds. The Manuel Sarum gives the words for churching. Historian Eamon Duffy notes how fixed this parish custom became in late medieval England. You plan for it, but do not rush it. Return to the hall requires patience. The midwife orders simple food and quiet. She keeps the room warm without stifling it. She checks your belly for tenderness and watches the smell of the cloths. She tells your ladies to wash hands and keep visitors few. Monica H. Green shows that healers recognized fevers after childbirth and relied on routine, cleanliness, and observation. You see this in the midwife's method. Order is your best tool while causes hide. The physician advises broth, watered wine, and rest. He sets aside purges for now. John of Gadsden's Rosa Anglica recommends moderate warmth and simple drink after birth. He quotes the line and stops. Today, he does not argue with the midwife. At Vespers the same day, the king comes to the door. He touches the child's forehead and your hair. He thanks God and the midwife by name. He speaks briefly of the border. He says the Lord sent correct gifts. He does not speak of sons. Others will do that work when they judge the time. Back to Westminster. Politics waits outside, but keeps count. You doze and wake. The nurse brings the child for a brief suckle, then carries her back. Your ladies change the sheets. The midwife measures bleeding by sight and weight. She writes the tally on wax herself. She does not trust a clerk for this part. Numbers here decide the next step. Exactly a year earlier, a princess at court died in the 5th month. Faces softened for a while. Demands did not cease. The words changed. The goal did not. Back to Westminster. At vespers on the 3rd day, you feel a chill. It climbs your spine and sets your teeth on edge. The midwife brings cool cloths with vinegar. She checks your pulse and your belly. She opens the shutter a hand's width and closes it again. She sends for the physician without leaving your side. This might be the turn you feared. The physician arrives and keeps his roll closed. He orders airing and drink. He will not bleed you. He remembers your blood loss. He asks about the placenta. The midwife answers, whole, inspected, no fragments. He believes her. He tells your ladies to keep the room quiet and clean. The confessor sits near but does not speak. He keeps a psalm under his breath. He moves the ewer to the side table and places a cloth over it. He reads the room and yields command to the midwife. One voice leads when fever threatens. At dawn the next day, the fever will either climb or break. The midwife sets watches. She notes each hour on wax. She keeps her hand on your wrist until your breath evens. She repeats the plan. Clean sheets, measured air, no crowd, record everything. Back to Westminster. The next sunrise will judge the chamber's skill. At dawn the next day, the fever holds. Your lady notes the hour. The midwife checks your wrist and belly. She smells the cloths for danger. She keeps the room quiet. This hour demands discipline. The physician arrives before prime. He orders cool sponges with vinegar. He asks for brief airing, shutters open to hand's width, then closed. He refuses strong purges. He remembers your blood loss. John of Gadsden's Rosa Anglica advises moderate warmth and simple drink after birth. He quotes it once and stops. Back to Westminster. You shiver, then sweat. The midwife changes the sheets fast. She presses your belly gently. She watches your breath. She sets rosemary by the brazier. Monica H. Green writes that medieval healers recognized patterns of childbed fever and leaned on routine, cleanliness, and close observation. You see that rule here. Small signs may mislead. Your confessor sits near and keeps his voice low. He rests a hand on his book, not the ewer. He knows baptism will be in the chapel, not here if the fever breaks. He waits for proof. Exactly 3 months earlier, a baron's wife in the city died on the 4th day. The coroner wrote fever after birth. Parish women remembered the smell first. Back to Westminster. At terse the heat climbs. Your teeth knock once. The midwife orders cool cloths again. The physician keeps you drinking watered wine. He will not bleed you. He will not force the bowels. He holds to patience and food. The nurse brings your daughter to the breast for a moment. The midwife allows it. The child feeds and sleeps. The nurse takes her back. The room centers again on your pulse and heat. A pattern might be forming. At sext, you sweat without chills. Your hairline dampens. Your breath eases. The midwife watches 10 slow counts before she nods. She calls for clean sheets. She changes your cup. She says one word, breaking. Back to Westminster. You sleep for a short hour. When you wake, the room smells of beeswax and rosemary, not sour cloths. The physician checks your eyes. He writes a single mark on the wax. The midwife permits soft bread and broth. She keeps the same rules, clean hands, measured air, no crowd. Proof first, then relief. Exactly a year earlier, a duchess fever broke on the 5th day. The chronicler wrote one line and turned the page. Back to Westminster. The confessor carries the ewer to the cupboard and closes the door. He thanks God without a speech. He adds a candle for St. Margaret in the chapel. He leaves you to sleep. The steward returns from the north. He reports smiles that felt thin. A cousin courts rumor again. He measures roads and writes careful letters. Your steward answers with the council's names and a steady face. He says the talk will cool, then rise by winter. Politics resumes as soon as breath studies. At vespers, the king comes. He looks first at you, then at the cradle, then at the midwife. He thanks her by name. He gives a ring. He speaks of roads and weather. He avoids errors. You hear what he leaves unsaid. Back to Westminster. The midwife sets the night rule. Sleep between watches, drink when woken, clean cloths at each change, note every pain. Your ladies repeated back, one by one. The physician signs the order with a cross. He keeps his roll closed. You close your eyes. The fever broke. The child sleeps. The chamber holds its order. Morning will judge again, but tonight is yours. Tomorrow sets the pace again. At dawn the 40th day, you rise. Your bleeding has ended. Your pulse runs even. The midwife ties your veil. She checks the cloths one more time. She nods. The chapel door is next. Your confessor waits with the manual Sarum form for churching. The rite returns you to public rooms if strength allows. Historian Eamon Duffy describes this as fixed parish custom in late medieval England. You know the words. You can walk. You step into the corridor. Beeswax gives way to damp stone. The king stands at the threshold, not inside. The blessing is said at the door. Your confessor raises his hand. He speaks the prayer. He touches the book to your veil. He gives you a candle. The wax warms your fingers. Your breath stays even. The chamber's work becomes public in 1 minute. You cross into the chapel. The king steps back. Your ladies answer the responses. The nurse steadies your daughter. The midwife watches your face. The prayer ends. Your confessor lowers his hand. You return to the hall's pace. At the hall door, the council waits. They bow. They study your color and the steadiness of your step. They ask after your strength. They ask after the child. They do not ask about the fever. They mark that you stand here. Exactly a week earlier, the steward listed baptism gifts and the ones that failed to arrive. You marked the thin purses. Back to Westminster. You will remember who kept measure. At dinner, talk turns to the north. A cousin courts rumor again. He writes careful letters. He counts roads. Your steward answers with the council's names and a firm tone. The king plans a spring ride. He leaves sons unspoken. The point stands without the word. You present your daughter in the great hall. The nurse holds her. The godparents stand near. You place the midwife beside them by your order. Witnesses matter. Barbara Hannawalt showed how sworn women stopped early disputes in English households. You use that rule here. Placement sets your line without a speech. A lord from the march says quietly, God keep you from another hard bed. He means fever. He also means pressure to bear again. You answer, I will do my duty. You add, the chamber keeps its order. He steps back. At vespers, you sit in your room. The physician writes one sentence. Churching complete, mother steady, infant strong. The confessor lights a small candle before St. Margaret. The midwife reviews night rules with your ladies. Clean hands. Measured air. Quiet. Records kept. Order stays in place after the rite. You ask the king for one grant. He listens. You request a patent that sets the midwife in your household by right, not favor. Fixed wage. Authority in the chamber and writing. Named assistant. He agrees. The clerk brings the draft at prime. You seal it. The king seals it. The midwife bows and tucks the paper into her sleeve. This secures the next lying in before it begins. You hold your daughter while the nurse waits. You count her breaths. You touch her hair. You plan the calendar with the steward. Short progress if roads hold. Rest days marked. Chapel visits noted. You control what you can reach. Exactly a year earlier, you skipped rest after a winter progress and paid for it. Back to Westminster. You adjust the road to fit your body. You asked why queens feared childbirth. You have the answer. The risk is real. It sits in the chest beside swaddling. It lives in a clause that orders cutting after a mother's death to try for baptism. It shapes treaties, visits, and beds. It pushes you to build a room that can carry a hard hour and keep a record without panic. You look at your daughter. You say her name. You say, I live and I decide what this chamber requires. That is the line you hold.